CCS executive on Wednesday, September 11th at 10 a.m. And we are in recording mode. Beth, will you please call the roll?
Austin.
Here.
Bertucci.
Here.
Dorfman.
Here.
Seelig.
Here.
Leffler.
Here.
Lemke.
Here.
Livergood.
Here.
The CCS, we have Rebecca Malinowski, Deborah Wishmeyer, and Beth Stockburner.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Rebecca sent our packet out. So are there any additions to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll consider our agenda adopted. And is there any public comment? Okay, seeing no public comment, item number 5 on our agenda is the consent agenda. Did anyone have any questions about anything on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I cannot speak this morning. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Austin.
Thank
I'll
you.
second. Leffler.
Okay, thank you, and Beth, the roll.
Austin.
Yes.
Bertucci.
Yes.
Dorfman.
Yes.
Seelig.
Yes.
Leffler.
Yes.
Lemke. And Livergood.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and now I will turn it over to Rebecca for our meeting business.
Our first component is the recommendation on Vernon Area Public Library membership. And I would like to apologize that I did not send the world's briefest write-up out ahead of time. I did include in your email the Vernon actual membership application, as well as the their resolution and signed IGA. So as a review of the process, executive committee will recommend their membership to governing board will vote in November, and then we'd begin the process. So I think you all are aware of Vernon's geographic proximity to existing members. I have a couple of notes here. One thing that I think is interesting, and this is looking at a little bit of older data because we're looking at some IPLAR data. If we look at the reciprocal borrowing activity of Vernon patrons at CCS, it is equivalent to about 11% of Vernon's physical circ based on their IPLAR data. We do have automatic renewals. So if we exclude CCS renewals, which it's unclear if, Vernon included renewals in their IPLAR, it would drop to 6%, but that's still a pretty hefty amount, I think, and a great reason to add them to our group. I also want to highlight did I jump correctly on the Zoom as well? No. Okay. I'm pretty sure I did that wrong. I want to highlight a document, or not a document, but a tool that Rails has put together. The link is, I'll share the link out to everyone. This is public, but we can look up a standalone library, such as I've done here, Vernon Area Library, and then it gives some key metrics of service population, collection size, operating expenditures per capita, and then in the top chunk, you can see comparing that standalone library to the various LSAP consortia. So this is set to, for the catalog consortia, it's set to the median. So you can see that Vernon is essentially at or above the median metric for for existing CCS libraries. You can also, just for future reference, change the percentiles to the minimum at CCS, the maximum, or top and bottom 25% to see how a potential member would compare to CCS. So I think this is a really helpful tool. It is designed for standalone, it's sort of designed for standalone libraries to look at consortia and see maybe where they would best fit, but I think the inverse works just as well. There is a map here, but it is, I think, in development still to get the best kind of view. Yeah, I mean, where are you, Vernon? Hila. There we go. There's Vernon. And you can, so standalones are brown and CCS members are blue. So you can certainly see that Vernon is in a nice little nook where we would love to create more reciprocal access. So again, this is a Rails developed tool. I think it's a great tool and I'm happy to share it with everyone. I'd also note that, you know, Vernon has been a standalone library for a long time. They were a member of CCS many moons ago, but they're sort of already looking forward with how do we function in a consortial environment. They were recently doing some work on their circulation policies and reached out to CCS to like get some information from us to make sure that whatever they do now would be compatible in the future. So, with all of that in mind, as well as like fee projections, again, we would not see any negative impact to our members for bringing Vernon in. I would recommend that executive committee recommend to governing board to approve Vernon's membership request. And I have a sample motion here. I'm happy to take questions. Oh, I'd also note we factored the Vernon membership into our staff kind of workload and goals for next year as well. So we have staff capacity to handle the project.
All right, well, seeing no questions, I will go ahead and make the motion to recommend to governing board to approve Vernon Area Public Library's request for CCS membership effective November 2024 with a planned go live in fall 2020.
I'll second. Dorfman?
Okay, and Beth, you call the roll.
Austin,
Yes.
Bertucci,
Yes.
Dorfman,
Yes.
Feelick,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Lemke,
Yes.
Livergood.
Yes.
Next on the agenda is an update about Mount Prospect and Waukegan.
I would say things continue to be going well for the project. Deborah will give an update on innovative system performance, which I would say at this time is kind of our only, well, one of two hiccups that we have with the current project. When we brought Warren Newport in, we started with a new process to kind of like preload e-content before the library went live to help make sure that was accessible to patrons, you know, at go live instead of several weeks after. But given that we are having these kind of intermittent system issues, Deborah has recommended, and I strongly agree, that we should not try to load to libraries e-content records, since those are kind of some of the jobs that are messed up. So that is on hold until our system issues are resolved, and that has been communicated to the incoming libraries as well. We also have a new issue, well, a new issue with 7.5 that largely affects the two new libraries, but also affects two existing CCS members based on how they process serials. And it relates to how holds work. So Deborah is working on a recommended workaround and trying to work with Innovative to see if this is an as designed situation or if it's a bug that will be resolved. So neither of those you know, are putting our schedule for the member libraries for the new members at risk, and go live is still on track as planned.
Great. Any questions? Okay, fantastic. And Rebecca has, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just have a quick question, not about this, but just a comment on other libraries. Can you tell us a little bit more about your conversations or the planned conversations with Cook Memorial? I was just interested in, like, yeah, that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's next on the.
Oh, sorry, I
No,
skipped
it's
ahead. Okay, sorry
That's
about that.
okay.
I thought that was included, so.
All together. Yeah, so I don't have a lot of information to share. Essentially, after the last governing board meeting, I emailed David Archer to ask, like, oh, we've heard some kind of rumblings from our members that Cook might be interested. I did look back at my communications. I had sent information to some Cook staff, but it has been like literally a year since I had those conversations with the staff members. So I sent an email asking if I could provide any additional information, or if, you know, they had, if they're still considering membership, or kind of like what's cooking. And so he replied that they are not pursuing CCS membership at this time, and said that he'd be, because I had offered to come out. I'm like, I'd be happy to visit Cook, like whatever. And he said he'd be happy to have me out and we can talk about like what their process was, and you know, what, I think, how did he phrase it? What improvements could be made to the CCS platform that would make membership more enticing. Yeah, so that meeting is actually next week, Thursday. So I'm looking forward to that. I've not been to the Cook Memorial Library. I've not met David Archer. So I'm excited and I will be able to report more after the meeting. At this time, that's really all I know.
Awesome. Thanks, Rebecca.
All right, anything else on new and potential members before we turn it over to Deborah for innovative updates? Okay, Deborah, take it away.
All right, so since our upgrade to Polaris 7.6 last month, as you may know, we've had several system performance issues that are stemming from, at this point, two probable causes. One existing overnight job called DVCC Nightly had a new step added to it. And that new step takes a very long time to run because of how large our database is. So as a fix for that one, Innovative moved that step to just run once a week on Sundays. So that seems to be working out very well. The other issue is around blocks that are happening with other overnight processes and jobs colliding with each other. So throughout August, when we had system performance issues, as part of that, every time we reported an issue, Polaris had developers hop on our system to run traces to just figure out which jobs are causing sort of these new issues that we saw. So the development team and the support engineers have identified at least one job that they believe is causing this uptick. And again, it's possible there are other blockers as well, but this was the first major one they were able to identify. So this morning, actually, they applied a patch to fix the blockers that are occurring with that specific job. So it was just applied like about an hour ago. So we haven't had a chance to see if that is going to work. But we have high hopes that that will be, again, mitigate the issues we're having. And then we'll continue to monitor and see if other causes or issues pop up. So as part of that, CCS and Innovative support, we're monitoring our system every day. These issues are a little bit, they fluctuate. So if we check the system at, let's say, 7:30 a.m., by 9:30 a.m., we could potentially have a new block pop up. So it's kind of involving some continuous monitoring throughout the day, but your libraries have done just a great job of calling us as soon as they've found an issue. So we really appreciate that. Anything left off?
At this time, the expectation is that they will have to apply more than one patch. So, you know, they've identified this first kind of fix, and they're going to keep doing this additional monitoring because they anticipate there's other blocks that are happening, but they need to clear up this one before they can see the next one. So it is planned to be a little bit iterative, which is not my favorite because I'd rather it just be fixed. But I also like that they're patches as opposed to, you know, like, oh, we'll just rearrange the schedule again. Like they're actually making changes to the code to provide a permanent fix. So that also makes me more comfortable. You know, we just recommended to add a new member to CCS, and like the impact of adding a new member, I think is aside, like it's largely minimal. You know, like these problems are already happening, like saying no Vernon, we don't want you, or no, whoever, we don't want you, isn't going to fix the issues that we're having, but these patches should resolve it for the long term, even as the database continues to grow. So, yeah. That's what I would add.
I think Ryan had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious, are there other Polaris customers experiencing these issues, correct? Or is this unique to CCS?
I feel like at this time it's very unique to CCS because a lot of these issues are at the core tied to the e-content jobs that run every night. And CCS is pretty unique in that we're a larger consortia with a lot of e-content, but every library is an advantage library. So larger systems that share all of the same e-content, maybe like a county system or again, a consortia that they're in the same consortia and it's just their libraries. They don't have these problems because they just have like one account and we have 31 accounts that all have 75,000 plus e-content titles in them. So we are very unique in that aspect. And so I think that's sort of at the heart of all the problems we're having.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Deborah, was it last year or the year before? We've been trying to get some data on, like, we know that the vast majority of e-content checkouts happen directly with the e-content platforms. They're not coming through the integration. But we've been trying to kind of monitor discoverability and like, is having the e-content in the catalog truly a discovery win for patrons? Is it really a source where patrons are finding new content and you're getting new e-content users, from that? And I mean, honestly, the data has been largely inconclusive. It's just very hard to track. So part of Deborah's team is working on a project to kind of clean up Hoopla data. And as part of that, there will be some additional opportunities for tracking Hoopla, which is a little different because it's not integrated. It's like clicking links, but kind of the same principle applies. Are people saying, oh, look at this ebook that I found when I was looking for the print book? Or are they just, oh, I'm a Hoopla user, I'm going to go to Hoopla? Because we talked about, I think it was probably 2 years ago, we said, should we just turn off e-content? Because like we had e-content issues and then we fixed them. We were like, should we turn off e-content? Innovative was like, and they fixed it. And then we did this upgrade and introduced new related e-content issues. So one solution would be we don't have e-content in Polaris. That's not ideal. And if we ever then wanted to like re-add it later, it would be like months of just like a huge mess. So we've been very reticent to make that change. We are shortly on the agenda going to talk about our kind of discovery layer investigation, because the different discovery layers handle e-content in different ways, and that could also mitigate issues in the long term. So when we did the RFP for Polaris back in 2017, and then we implemented in 2018, having the e-content in the staff interface was a high priority for CCS member library staff. It is unclear if that is still a high priority for member library staff. If it is, a change to how it displays to the public is not necessarily going to help anything. It's the pulling in of records to the client that is the ongoing issue. So there's kind of a lot cooking here. I mean, like, our desire is that Innovative fixes it, making these processes more efficient. Absent that happening, my concern is, they're going to fix it and then another upgrade is going to come and break it. Which it's on our list, like, okay, fix it. Now, how are we ensuring that future upgrades aren't going to break it? But that is also another path, is, do we handle e-content differently, whether it is in how it is integrated or not integrated into the catalog, or more drastically, do we form an e-content consortium for just CCS members? Like, it seems a little redundant given that there are already so many e-content consortia in Illinois. But it's not, I mean, that's essentially, as Deborah said, that's how most other systems deal with it and why they're not running into these issues.
Rebecca, when you look at the discovery layer, and I don't know how it works, but I know from personal experience, once Glenview moved over to BiblioCommons, I'm checking out all my e-audiobooks now directly from the catalog. I used to go into Libby because it was
Mhm.
easier that way, but now it's so much simpler to see everything and just switch over to my ebooks from BiblioCommons. I'm doing it all now through BiblioCommons. So do you know if BiblioCommons is working through Polaris or if they're pulling directly from Overdrive?
I'm not 100% sure, but I do feel like they're using the bib records in our database.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. That might be something maybe like Terry would know, Lindsay, since she works so closely on that setup.
Harry retired, by the way. That so everybody. So Karen's our person who's handling all of that.
I
But
knew that.
Yeah, all right.
Actually, that's really good, Lindsay. I'll be curious to look, because you can get stats from Overdrive about the checkout interface of e-content. So it would be really interesting to look at the Glenview e-content checkouts
Yeah.
and see, do you have a higher percentage coming from the API than the rest of our libraries? When we did this research a couple years ago, we found like across the board, it was about 2% of all Overdrive checkouts coming from API connected tools, which could include an app or PowerPack. But that'll be really interesting. Maybe we'll look as we're doing our investigating of like, did your numbers go up since you've launched
Right.
Bib?
I just know that sort of my personal behavior has changed drastically since we adopted BiblioCommons. Deborah, will you tell me what you find out when you look at those
Yeah.
numbers? Okay, awesome. Thank
Yeah, I
you.
mean, Deborah's going to have to get the numbers from your staff. So.
Maybe one person can grab them. See, I'll let you know when I learn.
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, Lindsay.
They might not tell me, so just maybe CC me on the question. I'd love to know.
Next on the agenda, Find More Illinois.
This is also Deborah.
I can do that one, yeah. So we now have almost all of our libraries live in Find More Illinois. So we're at 26 libraries that are participating in both borrowing and lending in the program. I will say the rollout has been a little bit rough because we've had some new bugs introduced due to a software upgrade of ShareIt. So we have been working through those issues listed in your packet on page 15. We've been working through those issues with Rails. Right now, the biggest issue at play is a bug that causes a request to be routed to a library, even though their copy is checked out or unavailable. So this is causing a bit of confusion why requests are being sent to a given library and their copy's not on the shelf. So we are working through that issue and the others listed with Rails, and at this time don't have an ETA on resolution, but hope to have some updates from Rails by the end of the and then the stats for the month of August are listed on page 16 of your packet, and we can see that as we've added our new libraries, our numbers have definitely gone up. So we're seeing some really healthy lending and borrowing stats for that month.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Can I just say congratulations on what looked to me and felt to me like a pretty smooth implementation. I think you guys did a really great job when I was reading through this and, saw that you have 26 libraries on board. Just congratulations and nice work.
Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lindsay. All right. User experience testing.
Yeah, so I have this listed on the agenda as user experience testing, but it's sort of our whole process for it's going to happen after the user experience testing. The first thing I'll say is that Gayatri, our user experience specialist, is currently recruiting libraries to support user experience testing. So she is still looking for volunteer libraries who will essentially let us put a banner in PowerPack and some text in the notices to say we're recruiting members, and then to partner with us to provide small meeting space to meet with patrons closer to where they live instead of in Lincolnshire. So if your library can support that, please shoot us a ticket so we can get you signed up. I know Joanna has already enlisted Park Ridge. Thank you, Joanna. And I don't know if there are other ones. I just saw that one come through.
We've had one other Algonquin. So
Okay.
I think Gayatri's looking for about 4 to 6. So we're still looking for a couple more.
So if you have a little leeway in staff time to help out Gayatri and all of your CCS neighbors, that would be great. So I've kind of in the packet broken down some various phases for what's going to happen, looking at this user experience testing as phase 1 of what's going on with discovery layers. So kind of jumping to the end of the process, CCS's contract with Innovative is up in 2026. So, and that's like spring of 2026. So from spring of 2025 to spring of 2026, we're going to be in Innovative contract negotiations. So a lot of what we're doing in this year is evaluating all kinds of things to see if we want to use an Innovative tool and include it in our contract, or use an external tool and pursue it separately. So a huge piece of that is, of course, the discovery layer. So we need to have governing board by May of 2025 give CCS approval to pursue some option. So the first step of that is we want to start with the user and make sure that whatever decision we're making is going to provide the best possible experience for end users, for our library staff. So Gayatri is leading a multi-pronged testing program. And like the strategy she's come up for this is just like great. I think like each user is going to use each interface for a task, and it's going to like rotate which interface the user uses first. And it's just great. It's very well thought out. I'm very pleased about it. And then after the actual user testing, there will be a brief survey where they'll get to also just kind of like rate which one they liked best. So we're collecting both quantitative and qualitative data. Were they able to complete these tasks? And also like, how did they feel about the tasks and which one did they think was easier? So she has a lot on her plate over the next couple of months. She'll be gathering all that data, and then we expect she'll have some reports for us by the end of the year, which we'll be able to share with governing board in February. I mean, we can send them out early, but we can talk about them at governing board in February. And then the plan, which we'll discuss with long range planning, Ryan, coming up so soon, loving it. The plan then is to take kind of the top scoring, like, do they all score about the same? Are there standouts? We don't know yet. We haven't done the testing. And do some additional research. So, that's when we'd be talking to vendors about pricing. That's when we'd be looking into more of these mechanics, as, kind of Lindsay and Deborah were just talking about, how does e-content work? How do these other pieces work? So we'd be doing additional research at that time, including vendor demos and reference checks. Glenview has already offered to kind of do a presentation on their experience with BiblioCommons. So I think that would kind of fall into like a reference check component. And, they want to do a presentation for everyone. So that would probably happen in this like January to March time period. And we'd look at, again, how many vendors are we looking at is going to depend on that UX testing and like kind of primary research. And then CCS staff will kind of wrap all of that information together, kind of the technical end, the user end, the pricing end, and develop a presentation and recommendation for governing board. So again, we're looking for governing board to kind of make a decision in May of 2025, but we likely wouldn't see any change in the actual tool that we're using until 2026. And like there is some wiggle room in that, like certainly if we're using, like again, just depending on what tool is decided, how long the configuration takes, what the rollout looks like, that timeline could really vary. So that is kind of what we have drafted at this time. Again, we'll be reviewing it with long range planning. But we have this kind of blocked in CCS staff project time for like a full year project, with the first half focused on UX and the second half focused on kind of additional research. What questions do you have about this?
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Is there a concern, if we're beta testing or getting data in fall of 24, we decide a product in 2025, by 2026, that product's gonna look different?
That's a great question. I think the answer is not substantially.
Okay.
I mean, if we're, and it depends on the tool, right? Like, the short answer is like, we're not going to be able to use PowerPack forever. Eventually, Innovative's going to be like, we're not selling PowerPack anymore. And they're kind of already trying to. New customers, they're like launching with Vega as like kind of the default, which, I think I would say BiblioCore is probably the most stable out of Vega Discover and Aspen in terms of like what the product looks like and what the long-term, like the development is probably, and again, I say this based on like how long it's been in market and like the reputation of the company, not knowing actually anything. That, it's making small improvements and small tweaks. Whereas, Discover, they're still like building it out.
Sure.
Like that is the one that I think has the capacity to look the most different. And then when it comes to Aspen as an open source tool, it is one, the most configurable, and two, kind of it's the most malleable and maybe the most volatile. Like,
Sure.
There could be a lot of changes in the code base in 2 years, but we don't necessarily have to use them.
Right.
But also we could be driving, like, I don't know. Does open source make me nervous? But I think we have some good options. And I think, again, like the timeline has some flexibility in it, based on how we want to spend our funds and time.
Thank you.
Rebecca, my question is, with Vega, can they handle CCS? Like, wasn't that part of sort of the beta testing? Weren't we partnered with them to make sure that they could handle a consortium our size?
Well, so the issue was not necessarily their capacity so much as their development speed. They just like haven't built it on the timeline that they were supposed to build it on. And so they do have consortia that are live now on Vega, and we do have a Vega test site available to us. And yes, it works for consortia. The issue was like, we had an internal timeline and we had staff time available on a certain timeline to do like a rollout. And like, we've never actually done like live beta testing in our libraries because they miss their deadlines. And so then we were like, well, we got to add this library. Oh, we got to add these other 2 libraries. Like, we don't have time to do this. You missed your development window. So, I mean, we're happy to include them as we look at like what's available in the market. And I do think they are a viable option. Are they the best option? I don't know, but they kind of like lost that advantage of the partner program based on the development speed.
Gotcha. So if we went with them, it would work.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is a functional tool. There are consortia using it. It's just a question of, is it the best tool?
Gotcha.
Okay. Any more questions?
I just have a comment. This looks like a great plan. I'm very excited about a new discovery layer. I have a bias which I won't share with everybody, but I'm excited. So thank you for laying out such a good plan for this.
Yes. And talk to your staff.
I feel the same way. I'm very excited to get a new discovery tool. I have never been a huge fan of PowerPack, and at least to see what else is out there is very cool.
talk to your staffs, recruit some other libraries so they have a good pool for testing. So, okay. I'll go on. I just have a brief president's report. So just a couple of things. We have some schedule changes. So our October executive committee meeting has moved to the 16th. The November governing board meeting is November 20th. There were some conflicts with local elections, and we will be at Indian Trails. So that'll be nice to see another library. Lindsay, Pam, and I are going to start working on Rebecca's executive director review. We're meeting on Monday. Rebecca's completed her self-evaluation. So our goal is to have something for this group to look at in October. Looking forward to working with Lindsay and Pam on this process. That's all for me. Secretary?
Me next. I was looking for my agenda. No report.
All right. Treasurer?
The only thing I'll note, still early in the fiscal year, our big expense this month was for EBSCO, and I was just kind of curious, Rebecca, was there with the Rails initiative, was there any discount? Was there anything that you want to share about what that EBSCO renewal looked like for us this year?
Yeah, so we did negotiate. Well, I'll start by saying EBSCO, we knew they would do this. They came to us and said, we're going to take off the components that are in the Rails plan. So, EBSCO was very forthright and came to us and said, we're going to do this. And they had kind of even said it when we were doing our last renewal. If they get selected, we don't have to worry about a contract, sticking us and double paying. So, we saved about $25,000 on the renewal. So what's included with the state plan is the base novelist K through 8. What is included with CCS is Novelist Plus, which includes nonfiction content, and Novelist Select, the integration into the catalog that pulls in some enrichment data to our catalog records, and then Library Aware. So we will be talking about our EBSCO group purchase over the next year, because we had an 18-month contract. So we had just completed 6 months, and now July through June is the last 12 months of that contract. So it's a great opportunity for us to revisit. Is Library Aware still a tool that many libraries are using, and in what capacity, as well as what are the stats on Novelist Plus usage? So again, that's looking at the nonfiction content in Novelist. Do we want to drop or change the EBSCO purchase? So now would be a time to do that. And then, you probably already know this, but even so, I guess it's all changed again anyway, but where there was overlap before between the Rails group purchases and the CCS package, which was some Novelist overlap, member libraries who were in both got to choose an additional database from Rails to make up for this. So I'm not sure how that has all shaken out. I haven't talked to Layla about that, but I know that Layla had revised pricing and everything at the ready. So your Rails purchases have been adjusted as well to reflect kind of the statewide components.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. That's great.
Yep.
Anything for committees and groups?
Minutes or summaries are in the packet if you have any questions.
Okay, and the executive director's report.
The only thing I'll add is that at today's staff meeting later this afternoon, Virginia will be announcing her retirement to the CCS staff.
I like that you're whispering.
I don't want, I just don't want to I don't want to. So Virginia has had a very long and successful tenure at CCS and has, well deserved this time. And she's very excited to spend it with her grandchildren. She has 2 adorable grandchildren, Mabel and Margaret. We're going to miss her at CCS. We have She is planning to retire at the end of the year, so we're looking at her position and making some changes to it and hope to get something posted ASAP so we can hopefully even backfill and a new hire could get some time with Virginia before she leaves. The rest of the staff are going to find out in a couple hours.
3 hours, yeah.
So
All right. Anything else for Rebecca or Deborah? Okay, I will make a motion to adjourn at 10:40. Can I have a second?
Second.
Anthony, thank you. Okay, we are adjourned.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Have a good day.